Mai haere mai ki tēnei hui o te kaunihera o Rotorua. Welcome to this Rotorua Lakes Council meeting. We are in our draft long-term plan hearings. This is day 6, the 28th of May. Before we start our meeting today, I'd just like to ask Councillor Wang to open us up with a karakia.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tutawa mai runga, tutawa mai raro, tutawa mai roto, tutawa mai waho. Kia tau ai, te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, homie, huie, tā kie.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wang. Just a reminder to everyone that this meeting is being live streamed, so please have your mobile phones on silent, and we will look to take a morning tea break about 11 a.m. So we have our first submitter present by Zoom, Greg. Good morning, Greg.
Kia ora, good morning.
Good morning. We can hear you clearly. Can you hear us?
I can, and I can see you. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So we will hand over to you very shortly. Just a reminder, you have 5 minutes for your submission, and I will just kindly let you know when that 5 minutes has been completed. Otherwise, we look forward to hearing from you, and elected members, this is submission number 309, so you can bring up his submission. Okay, Greg, when you're ready.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou tātou. Thank you for taking my submission this morning. My name is Greg Lowe, and I wish to submit on the proposal to apply commercial rates to properties rented out short term and on the Lake Tarawera sewerage scheme. Firstly, the commercial rating proposal. My understanding is that Council is concerned about rental properties that are set up permanently for short-term rental, as these properties could be used to house local tenants, and also the Council wants to establish greater equity between short-term rentals and commercial tourism providers in regard to economic development contributions. These are important issues, but the way in which the proposal is currently made also captures holiday batches in the Rotorua Lakes area, which are rented out short-term. I have a holiday home at Lake Tarawera, which I rent out from time to time if it's not being used by family, mainly to help cover the operating costs of the property. As currently proposed, my rates would increase from $6,000 to $15,000, which is an increase of $9,000 or more than 180%. Holiday homes that are rented out part-time are a different proposition to properties that are set up permanently for short-term rental. People who rent out their holiday homes do so on an intermittent part-time basis, and these properties are essentially shared use, sometimes used by the owners and sometimes used by holiday makers seeking a late holiday. Occupation and demand on services is generally less than if the owner lived in the lakes area permanently, and holiday home rentals are generally not in competition with motels in town because of the type of holiday experience being sought. Holiday home rentals bring additional tourists to the region, which provides added benefit to tourism and hospitality businesses in Rotorua. The question of making a development contribution is a valid one, but the current proposal is blunt and out of proportion to the rental period and the rental income. The current proposal would create a levy, which is a very large proportion of the income generated from holiday home rental. This will discourage holiday home owners from renting out their batches short term and will likely reduce the availability of holiday accommodation in the Rotorua Lakes. Holiday makers will then go elsewhere because they seek that kind of holiday, reducing the number of tourists visiting Rotorua and reducing the positive economic impact on food, fuel, tourism and hospitality businesses. And this will also reduce the income of other local businesses that support this activity, such as cleaners. This is the opposite outcome to that needed to rebuild tourism in the district. If you wish to levy a contribution specifically on part-time holiday home rentals, the charge should be proportionate to the income generated. Draft LTP indicates the Council might raise $900,000 from 900 properties, inferring a charge of $1,000 per property. If full commercial rates are charged, funds raised would be well in excess of this $900,000, and my rough estimate is more than $5 million, which I think indicates that the proposal needs to be thought through further. And this is because the charge is based on property value, not on service provided. Alternative approaches, such as a uniform annual charge, perhaps prorated depending on rental usage, or a bed tax approach, such as other councils are considering, would be fairer. While not as simple to implement, they are not impossible, and more work needs to be done to find a scheme to place a levy on holiday home rentals that can work fairly. I would be happy to contribute ideas to this work, and I ask that you defer implementation for holiday homes until this work is done. This proposal is also being made at quite short notice. I was advised of this proposal 28 days ago. The levy is also being proposed at the same time as residents of Lake Tarawera are being asked to make a very significant per household contribution to the new Lake Tarawera sewerage scheme. And so secondly, on that topic, I would like to support the submission made by the Lake Tarawera Sewerage Working Group. Ratepayers at Lake Tarawera have been largely in support of contributing to the cost of this important water quality project, but the original proposal that ratepayers contribute around $20,000 has now grown to $50,000 per household. This is unaffordable for many residents at the lake. In contrast, council, who have a fundamental public duty in terms of water and wastewater services, is proposing to contribute only $2.7 million to the scheme, while asking residents to contribute $30 million. All of the Rotorua community and its future generations will benefit from ensuring the quality of water at Lake Tarawera remains high. The burden currently being asked of residents is out of proportion, and I ask that you rebalance the contribution sought from residents to something more in keeping with where the benefits lie. That completes my submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Greg. We appreciate you joining us by Zoom this morning.
Apologies for not being able to be there in person. I would have preferred to be, but wasn't able to be, but do appreciate the opportunity to be able to present via Zoom.
No worries, and you're most welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
I'd now like to invite Rob Steadman to the presenters table, and our staff member will bring the laptop over to assist with your presentation. Any seat you'd like.
Okay. Mayor Tapsell, councillors. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Oh, Tēnā what I want to talk about is something you've probably heard a lot about already during these hearings, and that's Proposal 11A. I won't read it out, you know what it is. Background, our current situation, my wife and I own a cottage in Rotorua. It is available year-round for rental, and the proposed rates increase is over $5,000. We're not a commercial entity. The income we get from the property covers the mortgage and other costs, and it also generates a small profit which supplements the state pension. Our position is quite simple. We agree that short-term rentals should pay an increase to reflect the use, okay? But it should be fair, timely, based on fact, not selective, and the process should be transparent. And I don't think it's any of those. Let's do a little comparison. This is our property. I'm just looking at the general rate and the business and economic development rate. That's how it breaks down. This is the Red Rock Motel just down the road. Pretty similar, lower rates. Let's do a little model. Let's say the occupancy rate is 50% and the average stay is 3 days. Just working through the calculations, 183 days of occupancy a year, 61 stays, but remember the motel has got 7 units, so they can split the cost by 7 different ways. So in other words, the rate per stay for us is $130 and the equivalent is only $19 for the Red Rock Motel. And there it is in black and white. Well, it's in red actually. And I just wonder, is that particularly fair? The rate increase should be timely. Now this came as a shock. We received notification of this on the 23rd of April. This is 19 days into the consultation period. I just wonder why Council didn't inform us in a more timely manner. And I wonder if that's fair. On timeliness, the new rate, if it goes through, will come into effect on the 1st of July. Most short-term rentals take bookings a year in advance. We can't pass on that cost. Not a good look. And I just wonder, is that fair? And it's a question for you. How would motel and hotel owners react if Council suddenly, with 2 months' notice, imposed a 127% rates increase? I don't think they'd be very pleased. It should be based on facts. I read this in the consultation document. Council acknowledges the contribution of short-term rental accommodation, but is presently the owner who receives all the benefit. Oh gosh, this is, I'm sorry you can't see these numbers. I've got a couple of printed copies here, but basically this is a report by Deloitte in 2017 that basically shows, I can't read my own numbers, it basically shows, I think I've got a breakdown next page. This is New Zealand-wide, but the same applies to Rotorua. Total contribution to the New Zealand economy, 781, 206 to host, 400 to local businesses. So it's, when you make statements like that, it's just not true, and it gives us, it gives a very poor impression. Really, that's what I think of that one. It shouldn't be selective. Now, I quickly went online, and within 2 minutes, I found lots and lots of properties that are not being charged this new rate. Here's some of them. There are a lot more. These are places that have 3 or 2 units, and their rates are only going up 10% or less. Okay? It's clearly a selective process, or something's gone wrong. And on that basis, again, I don't believe it's fair. Now, I just quickly cover this. There was a statement in the rates policy proposal changes that said you were basically going to every property that is zoned urban or on a rural is used for any business purpose except for industrial farming. Okay, and again, I might have misinterpreted this, but what I'm guessing is that massage practitioners, accountants, business advisors, etc., that work from home are not going to be charged this commercial rate. So again, it seems rather selective. Am I right? I don't know. But I would ask if it's fair. Could I just go to the last slide?
Yes. You're welcome to sum up.
Okay. Proposal. Defer this rate increase until July 2025 to give us time to react. Reduce the variable general rate from 0.005 to 0.04 to reflect that Airbnb properties are single units. Reduce the business and econ rate from 0.002 to 0.0015. And some words quickly, may I? Yeah. Words of caution. It might be politically expedient to lower costs onto owners of short-term accommodation, but please be aware of the possible negative impacts. The choice of short-term accommodation may decrease substantially. The costs will increase substantially. Guests that prefer Airbnb-type accommodation, like Americans, they love it, will simply go to another destination. Taupo? Tauranga? Kia ora, thank you for attention. Oh, and that last one said, and please be fair. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Robin. Thank you for preparing that presentation for us.
Thank you.
I'd now like to invite Ian Bolton to make his submission. Elected members, this is submission 289 in your files. Welcome to you both.
Kia ora.
You start. Kia ora koutou katoa. My name is Ian Bolton and this is Julia, my wife, sitting next to me. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge Ngāti Hinarangi o Pikiao for sharing the awa with us, such an amazing place to live. Your Worship Tanya, councillors and council staff, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Unaccustomed to public speaking as I am, I need to have a voice today. Today, I would like to talk about the 10-year plan and especially my opposition of the commercial rating of STR operators. Julia and I have a small business in Rotorua. We work in this business 5, 6, 7 days a week. We also operate an Airbnb on our property where we reside, often coming home from work, cleaning, setting up for our next lot of guests after working 10 hours. We work for our additional income. Nothing is handed to us on a plate. I think an injustice is being perpetrated on the STR operators in Rotorua, using a blunt force instrument of commercial rates to increase council revenue is a bit lazy and demonstrates the council's lack of care towards its own constituents. Also not bothering to work with stakeholders in the tourism industry in a collaborative approach to bring all stakeholders together seems counterproductive. What do we bring to Rotorua's Airbnb hosts? Personalised community-based accommodation. People feel safe and included in our community whilst on holiday. First-hand recommendations, rafting, luge, te puia, dining, Okere Falls store, Pig and Whistle, Eat Street, and even special local places like walking around the track at the end of the road, dragging the kayaks out on the lake, walking by the falls. We promote businesses for free. As a group, the spend by Airbnb guests on activities in the Bay of Plenty is almost $240 million a year. We are not lightweights. We play a huge role in supporting local employment and businesses. What is being proposed? A 60-day or less advertising period, otherwise you're rated commercially. I'm still having trouble believing this was even proposed. How can this be considered a metric of commercial operation? The 60-day rule is inconsistent with other councils and has been thrown out overseas. Slapping a 124% rate increase on our property without understanding our operation or consultation with us, we're all stakeholders here. We do use a portion of our property for Airbnb. There must be a better way of applying proportionate rates. Rates are a tax. Be consistent with how IRD applies tax law to business. Receiving a week's notice before submissions close of the proposal was pretty bad form, the letters going out. Maybe I need to keep my ear to the ground. Maybe I need to be responsible to see what's coming up in the community. So what are the possible alternatives? We all don't have short arms and deep pockets. We want to contribute in a fair and transparent way. We are stakeholders in seeing Rotorua thrive. Firstly, please postpone the decision on the STR rates. Find out who are STR renters and their setup, as I believe the council doesn't actually know. Then establish a register. Establish a voluntary working group of industry members and council to move us into a better way of doing things. Establish a bed tax. Simple, transparent, user pays. This takes the burden of higher rating off operators with lower occupancy. This is pretty normal overseas. $10 New Zealand is only $5 American or €5. It won't be noticed. Proportionate rating to an area used for providing accommodation. There is a lot of experienced people in the STR industry. By everyone coming together, we may even be able to reduce the funding burden of the council for promoting Rotorua. Conclusion. At the moment, the community is feeling a lot of mamai. It may be time to show that you're great leaders in our community. I think the council representatives could do better with this proposal. So come on, Team Rotorua, let's become greater than the city already is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian and Julia. We appreciate you taking the time to speak in person, which you did very well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Any questions?
I'd like to invite Ian and Francina Dope. Thank you very much. Welcome to you both. Elected members, this is 286 in your submission files.
Thank you, and we thank you for letting us present our case to you today in relation to the Airbnb proposal. I'm going to ask my wife to address you first.
Worship, morning, everyone. We didn't get the letter that was, sorry, thank you. We didn't get the letter that was sent out to providers of short-term accommodation. We found out about it through the Rotorua notice board on Facebook. I believe it would have been fair and reasonable for all ratepayers to have been given that information or sent that letter. Like, it could have been included with the last rates notice mail out at a relatively low cost and emailed for even less. The letter didn't apply to us, doesn't apply to us currently, as we're not currently letting our property in any way. However, we may have chosen to, as we did some years ago, so we would have appreciated having the information of the potential implications that a decision to let may have held for us as ratepayers. So although the letter didn't apply to us as ratepayers, we're here in principle because we don't agree with the proposal or the way that it's been proposed or notified of the process. Granted, at one end of the spectrum, there may well be ratepayers who use their property solely for commercial purposes, operating as a business. They may be obtaining occupancy and revenue, providing a commercial return at a similar level to commercial motel and hotel operators. I don't know of any personally at that level, but I accept that they may well exist. And for those operating with that level of return, perhaps what you're proposing could be considered appropriate. Charging commercial rates for an economically viable and profitable commercial operation. But I think for many, though, along and at the other end of that spectrum, this is not the reality. There are homeowners letting a part of their property when they can to help cover the cost of the mortgage or to help fund the costs of their children's education, pensioners and those on a limited income struggling to make ends meet, and there are some who simply enjoy the exchange of meeting new people and cultural exchanges. So to apply commercial rates to the homeowners of these types of groups, particularly with the proposed policy being applied retroactively, I think would be grossly unfair and unreasonable, potentially plunging some owners into financial hardship or worse. I liken it to little 8-year-old Johnny with a couple of feijoa trees on his property, you know, and at this time of the year, there's an abundance of feijoas, and so on a sunny day, he might bag up a couple of bags and put them on his front lawn with a sign, passers by, and neighbours might come and, you know, get some feijoas, and that's it. It's vastly different to the greengrocer down the road whose business premise shop sign is solely focused on providing produce for a profit. So in that sense, I think it'd be ludicrous to impose the same rates on Little Johnny's property is the rates charged to the greengrocer. The operation, the numbers and the economic equation are vastly different. You're not comparing apples with apples or feijoas with feijoas, and so on that basis I don't agree with the way the proposal currently sits or the way Council's gone about the process. I think surely there's a more fair and reasonable way to go about determining and applying commercial rates. I suggest perhaps a bed tax, that's applied on actual units used or purchased rather than some determination based on something that's not actually real or actual. I'm wondering also whether you are applying this proposal to homeowners who let their properties for long-term residential rentals. Is that considered commercial? Advertising on its own is not an indicator of the level of commercial activity of an entity, and the length of the time that you do advertise is not indicative of the level of commercial activity. It's possible you could advertise for 365 days and not get a single sale. I don't think it's fair or reasonable to base a fee on the length of advertising time alone. Anything? The other thing I was wondering was, how do you quantify the benefits of your destination Rotorua marketing activities that were talked about when we came to the hearing, as in, potentially any people that we have coming to stay with us, because they stay with us, we have the benefit of that. But yeah, I just wondered what evidence you had of the effectiveness of your destination marketing activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia, and also Ian.
Thank you.
Sorry, Francina, I said Julia, but thank you, Francina. Sorry. Welcome, Colin Jackson. Thank you for coming to make your submission. Elected members, this is 288 in your submission forms. When you're ready, you have 5 minutes, and there'll just be a little ding at the end of that, but we look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to speak predominantly on the short-term rental proposal and briefly on lakes infrastructure. From the document that came out to the public, I strongly disagree that short-term accommodation puts demand on roads, footpaths, parking, etc. Surely a fully accommodated property puts more pressure on council facilities. I strongly disagree that owners receive all the benefits, another statement in the document. Surely those that come to our town and our region spend more on just accommodation. I do agree that a fair and measured rate for all needs to be sought. I understand that councils need to explore all options for considered rating. I don't believe this has been done, and at the public meeting on the 29th of April, that was blatantly obvious. So I would like to see all options fully explored and fully costed. The proposal as it stands, in my view, has two significant flaws. One, the 60-day rule, which that seems like an extremely low bar, and two, the notion of it being advertised rather than occupied. The notion of being 60 days advertised would seem to a cynic as a method of stymieing and stifling business in Rotorua, and I don't think that's the plan of councils. The second flaw is that of the historical use determining future charge of rates. And given that this proposal would be a significant change, it doesn't give property owners the opportunity to modify the use of their property in light of a significantly increasing tax. So my recommendation to council is that you push pause on this proposal and take time to consider it. Consult with, have meaningful consultation with those that are engaged, and you will come up with an alternative plan, a plan that is appropriate, and will move the region forward. I won't. You've had numerous submissions on this, so I won't bore you with detail of my own personal one. And I'd like to move on and talk briefly
Everybody, we will get back underway with our submissions, and the first one up is Robin Lewis. Thank you very much, Hilary. And this is hearing 287, elected members. Hilary, you have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Okay, I think I'm probably here for the people who didn't turn up, who found it too hard to organise their thoughts into 5 minutes, especially on such a huge submission. So many points and so many things that need to be said. And I just failed. I failed to get it in 5 minutes. But I'm going to do my best, and I've turned up. I don't really know. I've spent ages and ages trying to write out a submission. I'm out at the lake, and I don't know. I mean, everybody wants to have clean, pristine lakes. It's one of the reasons we came here. It's such a beautiful place, and we need to protect it. I understand that. I don't think the system has been fair. I don't think the system has been thought out properly. To take out one sewage system, septic tank, and put it with another. Okay, I don't know. Let's leave that aside. What's actually happened? First of all, I just felt that we weren't given an adequate, we agreed to the system. You either had to have the system, or when I said I didn't want it, the local people said that you'll get taken to court, so you have to agree to the system. I wasn't happy about the price because we have such a high lease, we have such high rates, and then we had to find money for the sewage system as well. But we started doing Airbnb to try and help us get through. And looking through the system, I thought, council is trying to just assume that people can pay 88,000, and then if we had to pay commercial rates for renting out a room to try and get the bills paid, we have to sell. But that's our situation. So that's probably why I'm so upset at the moment. I found it really hard to work out what to say to the councillors. You have such a difficult job. There's been so much spending of money, and probably a lot of those projects haven't been really well thought out in terms of how much they cost. I've just brought up, if something's not broken, don't fix it. And the other one is, if you can't pay your bills, don't buy too many Christmas presents. And that's what it feels like the council in the past has been doing. If you've got a hole in your ceiling and the rain's coming in and you can't pay your bills, well, get people in to help you. The community could have been helping. Community could have put in these systems. There's all sorts of ways, but we're so corporate in this world now. I feel that, again, what would I do if I was in your shoes? I mean, I'd urge all the councillors, whenever you're making a decision, say, is it kind, is it true, is it helpful? And what would I do if I was in their shoes? So the same thing for me. I have to stop my anger at what's happened, stop my upset at what's happened, and say, if I was in your shoes, what would I look at? I don't know about raising funds, but I do know that in the short time that we've done an Airbnb, we've had so many lovely guests, and most of them from China. They get 7 days holiday. That's all they get a year. They fly in, they come to Rotorua, and they choose to drive right out to Lake Rotoiti so that they can be on a lake because they've never had that opportunity before. We love them, we show them around, we show them the walks, we show them the waterfalls, we cook for them, they have a fantastic time, they absolutely love it. Then they fly to Queenstown, and then they fly home. We already have such a good profile in Rotorua. Look at how much money you're spending on promoting it. Well, maybe some of that needs to be on finding the good places, finding people like us that give people a really good opportunity. I mean, I know I'm jumping all over the place, but The commercial scheme would mean that we'd sell our house. We'd have to go, because at the moment, we go and live in excuse my language, we go and live in a tent in the summer so that people can come and enjoy our home on the lake. If we had to sell it, then that's another rich family that takes a part of the council, you know, the lake property. We get people coming from all over New Zealand because they've always spent holidays at the lake. They like the lake. They want that opportunity. And I know I'm jumping about the place, but that's how it is. It's one of the things. And I feel proud. I really love it. We scrub our house top to bottom, and we get people in there, and they bring their grandparents' 70th, and they can bring their kids. And we're not rich. I mean, some of the people are, but we're not. But we do it as a service because it's so important. Did I say? And I think about the cost of the scheme. I've run out of time. Okay, I think about the cost of the scheme, and it has blown out. And the council was deceptive in the fact that I was saying at the time, I do not want to put this system in. I don't want the noise, because I'm very noise sensitive, and I've spent ages, for the first time in my life, building a garden. I put loads of flowers up because I put them in the guest house. And I've done vegetables for my first time, and I love it. And I listen to the birds, and it's healing. I've come off my antidepressants so that I can, you know, this is one of the tools I use. Now I've got this system, quiet hum. While I'm doing my gardening, and all it says to me is 88,000, 88,000. It's pretty stressful. So anyway, put that aside.
Thank you very much, Hilary. I'm sorry, we have to be fair on the 5 minutes.
Sorry, I lost it. Yeah.
But you have made your point very clear, and we thank you very much for coming in and sharing your story with us.
Thank you. And the last bit about the council and the national treasure of the lakes is, if I was in your shoes, I would be going to the government and saying, we need New Zealand to be clean and green. We need your help. This has gone wrong. We're very sorry, and we need your help. So good luck, guys, because you've got one hell of a journey ahead.
Thank you very much, Hilary.
Thank you very much.
I'd now like to invite Shane and Tracy McCarthy to make their submission. Welcome, Shane.
Good morning all. Thank you for allowing me some time to talk to you all this morning. I guess, like most other residents of Lake Rotorua, I've probably got 2 points to address that you've all heard, but it affects us deeply. In our personal situation, we will be facing a crippling financial and devastating effect on our long-term wishes and plans for our place if we are forced, if we have no option but to try and find $45,000 for our sewerage scheme. In 2014, we were lucky enough to purchase our property out at Gisborne Point. This was only affordable for us, however, because of the state of repair of the house at the time, after being used as a long-term rental for about 10 years. It took us over 18 months of me working on my days off, on my annual leave, and at huge financial costs to get this place to a place we could live in it or stay in it to enjoy. So we're not loaded, we're not rich. We paid less than $350,000 for that place as a second home. So we're lucky enough to have got that as a place to enjoy down at the lakes. But like I said, there's no way we are financial moguls. Our place is brought as an investment, not a financial one. It's an investment in us, in my family, my kids, and hopefully my grandkids when they come along. To have the place that I had when I grew up at those lakes. My kids have learnt the water ski out there, they've learnt the fish, they've learnt the boat. They come into here every weekend and mountain bike. We're down here most weekends. We financially contribute to this place. I've known of this Rotorua scheme since the early 2000s. I've been around that long. I have personally been to most of those yearly meetings we've had at Rotorua in relation to the scheme and the proposed scheme and things around it. At every one of those meetings, number one priority on top of the list for all of those residents that were there was the affordability of this scheme. The affordability for the residents and the people out there. At all of those meetings, and in subsequent communications from the council, we have been told what it's going to cost us, what our contribution is going to be. Plenty of times people have stood up and gone, that sounds good, it's horrible, we can make it work, but are you sure? Because otherwise we don't, we're not into this if it's going to cost more than that. It is going to be a financial burden for a lot of people. Those assurances have always been there. We come to 2024, it's gone up 3 times what we've been assured it was going to cost us as individuals. It's always been told to us it was a contribution to the cost of the scheme, not a share of the costing of the scheme, a contribution to it, our contribution. We all knew we had to make that contribution for the good of our lakes, but not just our lake in Rotorua or Rotorua, it's for all of our lakes, and it's for all of the wider district to enjoy. It's not just for us to then pay for as well when it's benefiting the rest of the community. Like I said, at a current proposed cost of $45,000, that is a 300% increase in what it was going to cost us originally. It is now grossly unaffordable for me and for a lot of others there. I don't believe you can expect the 770 odd residents out there now to subsidise somebody's incompetence and ineptitude within the planning and pricing and contract letting for this business. Not just that, there's also the over 100% increase in the cost of the annual service charge for the scheme as well, I believe. That was $378 a year. It hasn't been confirmed to me yet, but I believe it's over $800 a year now. Pay it off over 25 years, they say. Oh, that's good. A quick bit of a maths calculation last night. That will, in 10 years, cost me $10,200 a year in my rates. That doesn't include any increase in property values. And it's based on the long-term plan where there's a 2.6, a 1.9 and a 2.4 increase planned. I'm sure a lot of us around this table have been here long enough to know that there is never an increase of only 2.5% on your rates each year, more likely 5%. So again, I'm probably looking at close to $15,000 a year in rates in 10 years' time. In 10 years' time, my pension is $20,000. Unaffordable for all of us. I'll quickly brief the Airbnb short-term rental.
Sorry, Shane, it has been 5 minutes.
Yep.
If you want to keep it really brief, please.
Yep, not a problem. For me, $10,000 a year, that's 51 nights. I would have to try at $200 a night, maybe try and claim something back if I could. That's undoable, considering that the people who stay out there are lake people who want to use the lake, people who fish, people who boat. They don't take anything off the moteliers in town, but they contribute back into here through the tourist attractions. So please consider us. $15,000. It's a fair contribution for the residents out the lake to pay for the scheme. Don't use us as the bank because it's been gone over budget by somebody's incompetence within this council to make it run. Thank you very much for your time. Okay. Yes, you do, yep. Thank you.
I'd now like to welcome Kylie Brackfield to make their submission.
Kia ora. We are Kylie and Ricky Brackfield. Thank you for your time today and the opportunity to speak. We all share the passion for seeing our town thrive and grow, and it's great to be here today to demonstrate that, so thank you. We strongly oppose the proposed changes to how short rentals are rated, and we advocate for a pause to allow for time for a fairer, more workable solutions, such as a forward-looking levy that we detailed in our submission. We are not opposed to paying our fair share towards the marketing of Rotorua, but we believe this should not be through the blunt instrument of our rating system. We propose a pause to allow for proper consultation and development of a workable solution that benefits all parties, and that's including our town, Rotorua. A delay would provide time to determine exactly what the council aims to achieve and to create a fit-for-purpose solution, one that is not rushed, poorly legislated, or unfair. A pause is the right and it's the fair thing to do.
Intended consequences have probably yet to be discovered, and this is why we need proper due consultation, and this takes time to get right. The proposed system is highly inequitable. Short-term rental accommodating the same number of guests generating equivalent revenue will be subject to different rules. Some properties will pay commercial rates, while others will simply be exempt, which lacks coherence and fairness. Personally, our Airbnb, a tiny home and backyard, will see us paying all the rates just for the privilege of living our own home, while renting out just 30 square metres in our backyard for tourists. Meanwhile, the person hosting 4 people inside the 4 walls of their own home will pay nothing at all, according to statements made available at the public hearing. Implementing a levy is straightforward, as demonstrated by systems you already have in place. Registration, for example. The real challenge lies in identifying who is operating a short-term rental. Again, this will take time and partnerships need to be formed to achieve this. The statement made on page 19, the long-term plan, 2023 to 2034 consultation document, and repeated at the public meeting states, while Council acknowledges the contribution of short-term rental accommodation to our tourism sector, presently it is the owner who receives all the benefit and not the district. This is plainly untrue. To demonstrate our engagement with our community, here are the last 2 reviews from our guests who stayed in our tiny homes. This is the last 2 Sundays. Verse 1, your tiny home is wonderful. After a very long travel day, the hot tub's marvellous and your hostel
to develop a fair and effective solution for all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your submission, Kylie and Ricky, and we appreciate the suggestions that you've left us with as well. I'd now like to invite Nicholas Hanna, or Hannah. Welcome, Nicholas.
Thank you, Council, and Your Honour the Mayor, for allowing us to present. My apologies that I may say some things that you've already heard, and probably the repetition is useful. My wife and I bought a leasehold property at Hinihopu, Rotorua, about 12 years ago. We'd had to give up a property next door due to ill health when the lease ran out in 1997, having been a child and starting to be there since 1957 through to 1997. So quite a history. Having bought this property, we discovered that the septic tank would need replacing, as there were large kahikatea trees whose roots had damaged the system. Our plan was for our whānau to use the property and live semi-permanently there in our retirement. We received the East Rotorua Sewage Information Sheet about options in 2014. It's quite a detailed plan. In this, it had a short list of options which included option 5 and 6 about biolytics clusters with or without urine separation. The costing was $14,650 for a lump sum and a $358 annual operating charge. It notes, subnote, the Ministry for Environment, Bay of Plenty Regional Council and Rotorua District Council subsidies for options 4, 5 and 6 were not confirmed. We subsequently found out that septic tanks were no longer compliant under Bay of Plenty Regional Council systems for our area, which made that difficult. My whānau and my wife and I want the best for the lakes now and for our future generations, and for the users, which will include local, Rotorua District, Bay of Plenty, and New Zealand, as we've heard before as well, being used for tourism, local stays, cruise ships that come and use the Manapura hot pools, etc., with kayaking, all those things. We accepted that there would be a cost for this. So we were aware that this would be in the vicinity of $15,000 for a biolytics option. At that time, there were cheaper options, and one of them was to pipe the sewage directly to Rotorua, which was about $10,000. We apologise because we opted for that piping, one being cheaper, being good New Zealanders. We apologise for being unaware of the cultural impact of that option at the time and have become aware of that subsequently, and why the biolytics was a preferred scheme. So that was 2014. That is 10 years ago. There seemed to be so many delays in getting the scheme going. So in my submission that I had in, I know that we made the decision to participate in the scheme in 2021, 2022, and at the time the lump sum for the scheme was $14,692. Fortunately for our sewage system, we now have a biolytic system which is working well, thank you, which was option 6. But now, earlier in the year, we find that the cost for that was going to be $30,000, and then more recently, most likely, $45,000. Now, I am more or less retired and over 65. At the meeting this year at Rotorua Sports Centre, a significant portion of the ratepayers were pensioners. We've heard from a gentleman prior what his pension will be in 10 years. Hopefully it's going to be more than that. So although freehold lakeside properties are very valuable, not everybody lives in those lakeside properties and has high incomes. Just as an aside, another issue with our water quality which we're concerned about is the poor state of the Ohau Channel diversion of Lake Rotorua waters towards Kaituna River. And that needs addressing, please, Council. The increased cost seems to be neither fair or reasonable to be apportioned to local ratepayers, especially given the significant delays to delivery of the scheme, which appear to be Lakes District Council related. Now, apportionment of blame. The cost of preserving these lakes shouldn't be shouldered just by the local Rotorua ratepayers, but should be shouldered by the wider Rotorua District Council area, Bay of Plenty Regional Council, who have a responsibility, Ministry for the Environment, and as well the Ministry of Health, as per that footnote in the 2014 document. So where we are now is that Rotorua District Council needs to demand that these other councils, ministries, should be funding appropriately, as well as the RDC ratepayers generally, so this cost doesn't fall on Eastern Lake, Rotorua or Rotorua ratepayers. Hence, the long-term district plan needs to be changed to reflect this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. We just have our next submitter joining us by Zoom, so we'll just take a moment to get them ready. Welcome, Oliver. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly, thank you. Elected members, this is the Somerset Group Holdings Limited submission. We have Oliver Boyd joining us by Zoom. Oliver, you have 5 minutes and you can start when you're ready.
Kia ora and good morning, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to Somerset's submission on the proposed development contributions policy 2024. For a brief video, I'll call it the contributions policy. By way of introduction, I'm Oliver Boyd. I'm the General Manager of Somerset in New Zealand. My role, I have operational oversight for all of our new villages from before we acquire the land through the start of construction of the site. Appreciate you've got a lot of submissions on the policy, and I'll keep my presentation brief. I'd like to introduce Somerset and explain what we do. Somerset is New Zealand's second largest developer and operator of retirement villages, which makes us one of New Zealand's largest home builders. In fact, in March 2023, we were ranked second largest residential villages. Somerset has 38 villages completed in development across New Zealand and provides a range of living options. Somerset purchased a site in Fairy Springs, and we're really excited about bringing the first Somerset retirement village to Rotorua to provide much needed living options for the elderly population. Somerset has a proven track record over 30 years in building and operating high-quality care retirement. I'd just like to draw your attention to that distinction between comprehensive care retirement villages and lifestyle villages, as it's relevant in the context of leaving a development contribution. Somerset builds new comprehensive care retirement villages, which mean we provide continuing care as opposed to lifestyle villages, which have minimal and no care provided. Given that care component, comprehensive care retirement villages attract an older cohort. For Somerset, the average age of our residents on entry into the village is 89 years old. New Zealand's facing a housing crisis, including retirement living and aged care crisis. Rotorua is not immune from that. High growth in the next 30 years, and particularly growth within the 70 years and older. That population growth and demographic change will result in even further demand for retirement villages and aged care, which is currently seriously undercatered. It's vital that the regulatory environment recognise that is required to meet growing demand, and that funding for infrastructure is done on a fair, equitable and proportionate basis. Turning to the contributions policy now, for comprehensive care retirement villages like Somerset, the per unit occupancy is reduced when compared to a typical household unit. Somerset's average occupancy for its independent units is 1.3 residents per unit, and for its care units, occupancy is 1 resident per unit. In addition to recognising the unique population discount for retirement villages, the development contributions policy should also recognise a further reduction due to the unique low pattern of demand as a function of the elderly demographic. It's important that any contributions policy is clear on timing of payment. We We submit that contributions should be assessed on the relevant policy applicable at the time that resource consent application is lodged, with payment of the total assessed contribution staged such that proportionate amount is payable prior to uplift for the Code of Compliance certificates for each stage of the building. Demand on infrastructure is known by council at the time of lodging resource consent. However, the actual demand is not created until the units are occupied. So we consider this matter of payment fair and reasonable. Finally, we're utilising the COVID-19 fast track process for our Ferry Springs village, which sits outside the traditional Resource Management Act route for obtaining consent. So we'd like to see specific acknowledgement within the contributions policy that it equally applies to resource consent sought by any fast track consenting process. We'll shortly have two of those by the end of the year. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to our submission, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Oliver. We don't have questions as part of these hearings, but you're welcome to make any further points. You do have 1 minute left.
I have nothing further to make, so thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Oliver, for your submission regarding contributions.
Yes.
Thank you. Arapeta, kei te rere koe? Rere? Ka pai. Our next submitter is Te Kotahi Apikia, and we have Arapeta Tahana making a submission on their behalf. And elected members, this is 294. Welcome to you all.
Ko te wihi ki arangi nui e tui honei, ko te wihi ki apapatu anu ko e takotonei. Ko te wihi ki ngā ki te kauhi o ngāri ki e tia ki tēnā wāhanga i tēnā wāhanga o tēnei ao tūroa. O tira ka whakaaro ake ki a rātau ko e hingātu ai te tau i te marama ko a pahuri ake nei. O tira wa tātou tūpuna katoa kai te wāhi ngaro. E ki rātau I para I te huarahi mā tātou. Reira tēnei au katangi ake ki ngā mate kairungi o koutou pokohiwi. Kairungi o tātou marae I tēnei wā tonu. Koutou kai te wāhi ngaro, haere, haere, oki atu. Ka hoki mai ki a tātou, tuatahi ake rā tēnei rā te mihi ake ki a koutou, ngā rangatira o tēnei kaunihera. Tēnei te reo, o te tokotoru a mana wako tokoto, tira te kotahi apiki ao, e mihi ake ki a koutou. Me ki pēnei he mānuka nui, kai o koutou rekereke. Tēnā hikitia tau a mānuka, kia whaia he huarahi, hei painga mō ngā uri whakatupu o te tokotoru a mana wako tokoto. He oi kāre tēnei te tōro ake I te reo, engari kia mihi ake ki te kaupapa kai mui I te aroaro. Tēnā koutou. Kia ora tātai. I'm going to assume that you've all got translation earpieces in your ears, given it's an official language. If not, hopefully you got the gist of what I was saying there. If not, just to make it clear, I think you have a big challenge before you. Our submission talks about a few things, but today I'm going to focus largely on the cost of the sewage scheme to the Rotiti and Rotorua communities. I've brought along with me a couple of my daughters, so this is Taingaihe and Te Kirihana. They both carry names of their ancestors, 3, 4 and 5 generations back, but historically our ancestors have lived on those lands for some 25 generations historically. And really I suppose part of the submission is part of an ongoing battle for our sustenance and our ability to live peacefully on our lands. So coming back to the matter that's really concerning our communities in Rotiti and Rotorua, you're already aware that there's huge concerns around the cost of the scheme. You're also aware that we really haven't been informed up until recently that the final cost at a property level would be 3 times what has always been discussed. Until now, there's been a failure in terms of communication from that respect. There was awareness that the overall budget had blown out and the overall cost of the scheme was significantly higher than originally proposed. However, up until this long-term plan, there had been no clear communication that the final cost at a property level was going to be 3 times what it was originally proposed to be. there's detail in our submission that talks about, why we disagree with this and some of the things that we believe have gone wrong. But I really want to focus on it from an iwi perspective and from a ngahi ka perspective. Like I mentioned, my family and many others like Wairangi, many whānau that live in Rotorua, we've been there for hundreds of years. And you may not understand this context because you're relatively new councillors, and some of this context goes well beyond this council. For the last 100 years, we have faced impositions from both governments, councils, and just to point out a few from a council perspective, I'm the chair of Rotorua 15 Trust. It's one of the largest land blocks in all of the Rotorua district, 8,500 hectares. That trust, along with a lot of our land around Rotorua, around the 30s and 40s was under a lot of pressure from the council of the time. The pressure was coming because we weren't paying rates, essentially because the land wasn't used from an economic perspective. It was a food cupboard, it was a place for ceremonies, it was a place for relaxation and connecting with nature. And there were many threats from the council to take our land for unpaid rates. In that particular trust, Rotorua 15, we had to amalgamate 33 blocks, and then we're forced into a long-term 75-year forestry right agreement in order to create some economic value that we could then ensure that the council didn't take our land. If I come forward to the 80s, during the 80s, this council wanted to discharge the sewage from the Rotorua treatment plant directly into the Kaituna River. It was our tupuna and our iwi Ngāi Tipikiao that took that to the Waitangi Tribunal, was the third case in the Waitangi Tribunal. And fortunately, we won that. We stopped that. I'm just mentioning these things just to give you a bit of an understanding of our context, because this isn't a new issue for us. We've faced many impositions historically, and I suppose I'm urging you to understand that context, because this situation weighs heavy on the hearts of our whānau. Many of our whānau aren't high-income whānau. In fact, census data will tell you that the average income around Rotorua and Rotorua is about 28,000. A 45,000 bill when your whole income is 28,000 is hard to fathom. That in itself is challenging. What's probably more challenging for me, because I've witnessed this in my lifetime and beforehand, is families leaving where they come from because they can't afford to live on the land that their tupuna lived on, largely because of impositions like this. So I suppose I'm really urging you to think carefully before you make your deliberations about what might be a fairer option for this community. I don't think what you're asking at the moment aligns with what your vision is of a better Rotorua for all. If you land this 45,000 cost on each of the properties out there, I can't see how it's fair for our community versus the rest of the wider community. And I know you're in a challenging position, but I really want to encourage you to think very hard about what might be a fair solution to this situation. And we're very open to working alongside you as we try and work that out as well. I see my time's up. Thank you.
Ngā mihi nui ki a koe arapeta me tō whānau. Thank you very much for your submission.
Ka pai. Kia ora.
Sharon Hannah. Elected members, this is 295. Welcome, Sharon.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I just really want to honour the previous speaker and to agree with everything that he said. Our family has had connections with the lake since the early 1950s. It is not, it's just such a small time compared to them, but we have that connection and it is a very rooted connection. It is intergenerational. We are on to the fourth generation now. And our whānau just consider it to be their home. Our challenge is with regard to two options, two proposals in the long-term plan. The first was with regard to the cost options for the East Rotorua Rotorua sewage scheme. As has been repeated continually, the price has tripled. 300% is a huge increase when a high proportion of the people who live or permanently or semi-permanently in that area are of not a very high income at all. When you go to buy something and you expect it to cost $100, if it costs $300, that is not acceptable. We think that, there is a lot that could be said, and I have said more in this actual submission, but in reality, I think a solution to this is to seek funding from other places, regionally, nationally. The Regional Council, I think, has got a big part to play. 16% is not a sufficient contribution. The national level of government need to contribute as well. This is about preserving the lake. The effect of the reduction in pollutants going into the lake, or seeping into the lake through the septic systems that were there is minimal compared to that which comes through from the Kaituna with the broken baffles. But the big picture is that even with the other options of funding that are in the long-term plan, none of them approach the 15,000 that we all signed up for. They are all way over. It is a total budgeting blowout. It hints of mismanagement. It hints of a lack of governance oversight and strategic planning. It is probably good that you're a new council because you can bring changes and you can put plans in for the longer future. The other key thing that I want to talk about were the commercial rates being applied to properties who advertise short-term rentals. I would just like to point out that I don't think the criteria are sufficiently accurate to identify the actual system. There are people who deliberately have short-term rentals 24/7, 365 or 366 days a year. But the majority of people who are advertising their properties are doing it short-term to make ends meet. They are not out there as a business, they are not commercial. They are using the system to make ends meet. The actual criteria of advertising a lake place particularly does not equate to renting it. For a place to be rented for over 60 days a week, to be advertised for over 60 days a year is not, I think, a creditable criteria. It doesn't stand the test. So an earlier submitter suggested that a pause be put on and that the whole system be re-evaluated. I would agree with that. And I think that is all I really want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. We appreciate your submission. I'd now like to invite Sally Webber. This is 296 elected members. And you'll receive a handout shortly. Welcome, Sally.
Kia ora. Madam Mayor and councillors, my husband and I have operated a short-term rental for nearly 4 years now, and it's also used when our family come to stay. Our Tahua Country Retreat has been a haven for our guests. In the 11 acres, the Cunt lifestyle block we have, the 30 by 30 unit is something special in the whenua, the Tawanahiri and the sweeping hills when people come from the moment they arrive. It's nothing really we do, it's just in the land. When I tend to the guests, it's a privilege to do so. I love being a super host. It's been a highlight to become the guest's favourite spot, with 5-star ratings since we began. I love treating the guests with complimentary surprises just to make their stay extra special. It's viable to do ST, short-term rental, but it's also a privilege, and it's a choice that I like to leave fresh baking in the unit, maybe a cool bottle of wine and 2 glasses left in the forest on the picnic table if it's their wedding, or a small birthday goodie box. Sometimes it's just fresh eggs from the compliments of the hen house. Giving guest children their first pony ride, pony grooming and care, and presented with a little certificate at the end, no charge. A full complimentary breakfast trolley. I'm in my element doing this stuff. I love it. I'd rather serve than to be served. Adults with horse phobias come and they hang out when I'm grooming them. And bit by bit, they'll make their way up to the animals. Most of my animals are rescue animals, horses. They know what it's like to fear. They're very forgiving and kind, and they sense fear. It's a beautiful thing to see the 2 of them join up. This country short-term rental is what overseas guests love. My working history in a nutshell, I've trained as a commercial cook, self-employed for my 45 working years, the chairman of a community board for 2 terms in a little town, having a positive effect on the community. It was very satisfying and a privilege to serve as a host. The proposal for the rating increase will annihilate our Rotorua country retreat. Our future plans will be no more. We're on the verge of retiring. The blanket approach needs to go. Over the last few days, Council, you've heard some advice from some business heavyweights. I'm not one of them. People are far more experienced and knowledgeable than me and most in this room. There are some impressive ideas that will create a fairer solution. We all share the belief in giving the best to Rotorua's tourism. My question to you before I go is, if the proposal goes ahead, and we continue as a short-term rental, if and when we go to sell, do the rates revert back to residential or are they going to stay as commercial? I know you're not answering questions today, but one day I'd love to hear back about that, just so we know. I appeal to you to rethink the proposal. To me, it's like council are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I urge council to delay the project, to work in with these hosts that are powerhouses, combine your resources. I'm going to leave it there before that little bell tinkles. Thanks for listening, and I appreciate you listening, yeah.
Thank you very much for your submission. We can tell by your guests they've really enjoyed your Tahua country retreat as well.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Elected members, we will just take a brief 5-minute break. Our next submitter is expected to arrive at 11:20. LTP hearings for our draft long-term plan. Our next submitter is joining us by Zoom. Kia ora, Robin.
Morena tātou.
Morena. And this is Dr. Robin Manuel. If you wouldn't mind just using a slightly louder voice when you speak, as it has been coming across quite quiet here. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So, Dr. Robin, you have 5 minutes for your submission, and we are ready when you are.
Thank you so much. Te tuatahi, kia ora for the opportunity to kōrero ki a koutou with regards to the LTP. I take it my submission is read, but really I just want to talk to the main one. My kaupapa matua is the Rotorua Rotorua sewage scheme, and I apologise because I know that you've heard about this many, many times. Nō reira. I'm privileged to live on Papakainga out there on State Highway 30. We've had the whare for about 25 years. We moved there from Tāmaki to live full-time in 2017. If not for the sewage scheme that we are legally bound to connect to, we would have replaced our on-site effluent treatment system then in 2017 with a biolytics, as we already have one on another property also located in a sensitive environment. Since we've already installed one on another property since 2011, and that is still going strong, we know that full installation would have cost less than $14,000 then. And as we live on Papakainga with 5 other households, the price would have gone down if all 5 homes had the biolytics installed. Today, we could potentially install 5 biolytics for the 5 households on our Papakainga for $14,000 per whare. Councillors may not be aware that biolytics on-site effluent treatment systems do not require a treatment plant. The plant at Rotorua behind the Emery store and located on Whenua Māori is not required for households in Rotorua who have a biolytics installed and sufficient land for their dispersal field. We know this because we have one in our other property. In Rotorua, we occupy half an acre and therefore have plenty of space for a dispersal field. Rotorua households, however, do need the treatment plant because they don't have biolytics. Enhancing the mauri of Te Rotorua e Kitea Ai e Ihinga is of paramount importance to my whānau, their hapu and iwi ara Ngāti Pikiao. We are willing to contribute equitably to the health and well-being of our tūpuna moana. However, we are not willing to shoulder the burden of a blown-out budget that has resulted in an increase from approximately $12,000 per household to $45,000 and potentially plus per household. You've already heard that this is unaffordable for potentially all residents of Rotorua and Rotorua. I would argue that the loudest voices have come from the demographically different residents of Rotorua. This was also the case at the raucous meeting held at Rotorua Sports Club last month. I am, however, beyond concerned for our whānau hapu and iwi in the rohe of Rotorua and Rotorua. Our whānau whānui are not leaving, so the cost is certainly a significant stressor to all. Stress kills. Stress significantly shortens lifetimes. Our whānau whānui, and especially our koeke, aunties and uncles, are quietly suffering. You are directly responsible for this. With regards to inequity, it is inequitable that the ratepayers of Rotorua and Rotorua shoulder the cost of the treatment plant and associated infrastructure. I suggest that the health and well-being of Rotorua is the responsibility of all residents of Rotorua, thus all ratepayers should be carrying the cost. Significant pollution of Rotorua is via farming practices in the form of excess nitrates and phosphates leaching from agricultural fertilisers, animal food and manure. The purchase of a lakeside farm or two would do much to reduce nitrates and phosphates in our land. It's not too late to do this. An increase the lake enhancement rate imposed on non-polluters is equitable. Households much removed from the lake, such as ours, which is 300 metres, including a state highway away, should be paying. It is inequitable that we are paying the same as lakeside whare. I assure you, as an environmental chemist, that any sewage overflows into the lake have been due to lakeside properties. In my opinion, lakeside properties should be paying more than households far removed from the lake. Demographically, most Māori households are away from the lake. i.e. across the road. It is inequitable that whānau papakainga, such as our whānau, are the last to receive our system, and reinforces the familiar feeling of being second-class citizens in our own rohe. I remind you that we would have installed a bialytics ourselves in 2017. This is now our 8th year living in our Rotorua whare. It is inequitable, in fact, that Rotorua ratepayers are expected to pay the same as Rotorua, since the infrastructure required to get Rotorua's effluent to the treatment plant is significant. However, this is all moot if Council enacts the suggestions of many, including myself. The cost of the sewage treatment plant is shouldered by all ratepayers, and including the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. Finally, and in support of other submitters to this kaupapa, I formally request an independent review of the management of the sewage treatment plant in Rotorua and associated infrastructure, and that the findings are made publicly available. To reiterate, I am fully opposed to the recommendation that East Rotorua residents pay $45,000 plus for the sewage scheme. In addition, I support Chief Executive Moray's suggestion at the 1st of May Infrastructure and Environment Committee meeting to conduct a post-project review of the treatment plant scheme delivery, and that is also shared with the public, and in particular the residents and ratepayers of Rotorua. However, this should not replace an independent review. If I have time...
Sorry, Robin, that is a bit over your 5 minutes, but I've let you conclude. Is that your final point?
That will do. Can I just ask that the devolved funding for community boards remain the same at $250, and just point out that one of the things that funding was used for several years ago was defibrillators for our community, and that has saved several lives. So please don't take more money away from our little community. Tēnā koutou, thank you so much.
Tēnā koe, Dr. Robin Manuel. Thank you very much for your submission.
Kia ora.
Mamaku Residents Association. And now just checking, I see you have 2 submissions. Did you want to do those together or separately? It's 11:45, but we can do them. Okay. Thank you, thank you. So this is 299 for elected members. Mamaku Residents Association.
Morena, ko Rachel Bidwa, tōku ingoa tēnā koutou katoa. As the Vice Chair of the Mamaku Residents Association, I speak today on their behalf and for the community who have shared their concerns. We received all these concerns by social media in our meetings and feedback from personal interactions. Our LTP media post alone brought in 115 views and has set a new record for MRA posts. Now I am aware you, our elected members, have read a great volume of submissions, so today I speak about the issues that are most significant to our community. The LTP, as we see it, contains rural cutbacks. Mamaku, like other rural places, have seen these before. Mamaku does not welcome any further cuts. If this LTP was a hairstyle, it would be a kinner cut. We have more wool on our sheep than this LTP has left for our village. With the closure of our timber mills, Mamaku has gone from a bustling, thriving community to pretty much the last outpost of Rotorua. There is very little for the young children, teenagers, and even the elderly to do up here. We do not have a marae, we do not have any functioning churches, and now we don't even have our hall. The cost of living crisis and distance from town make popping into town frequently prohibitive. Council doesn't care is a cry we frequently hear from our long-term locals. We feel if you listen to us today, that is something we could actually turn around. But let me continue. We now have a new toilet block, and just completed is the Umaroa Street East drainage and footpaths, but that has taken 5 and 10 years respectively to achieve. We look at this LTP and see it only has cutbacks for our rural infrastructure and potential funding avenues, and we say no. The role of a city council is to ensure functioning infrastructure is there for the ratepayers that voted them in. Mamaku needs to be brought into the 21st century. We need more roads sealed, more street lighting, footpaths, drainage and safe traffic management. It feels as though Council has only just remembered us and now we see everything that we need cut. We dutifully pay our rates to this Council and all we see is urban projects, nothing for our rural community. So our recommendation today is targeted rates. A percentage of our rates goes towards our community. We realise there is only so much money in the budget and we do applaud the Council for attempts to rein in spending, but it doesn't change the fact Mamaku needs to see tangible improvements. When we cry out for roadside drainage, for example, targeted rates means there is at least some money in the Mamaku pool for this. We are not asking for vanity projects, we are talking about stormwater control, curb and channel, soak holes, culverts and in some cases footpaths. Some of our roads need sealing. Let's raise the maintenance frequency on open drain clearing and street edge sweeping, roadside mowing and weed control. The emergency embargo has ruined
Oh, both of them. Kia ora, and we welcome Waifata, who will be doing a submission on behalf of Ngāti Makino Iwi Authority and also Te Tāhuna Trust. So as you're doing too, you will have 10 minutes available to you. Welcome, Wai.
Tēnā tātou katoa. Ko waringi whataahau no Ngāti Piki o Ngāti Rongomai, Ngāti Makino. So, yeah, I'm here to to speak on behalf of Te Tāhuna Trust and Ngāti Makino Iwi Authority. So a bit of background about the entities and the iwis I'm here to speak for. Te Tāhuna Trust was established in 1981 under Section 438 of the Māori Affairs Act in 1953. It continues as an Ahu Whenua Trust under Te Ture Whenua Māori Act 1993. Our trust lands comprise some 49 hectares located at Henehopu at the eastern end of Lake Rotiti. We are strongly affiliated to the hapu Ngāti Tamatea Tūtahi, Ngāti Kawiti and the iwi Ngāti Pākehā. And we have a total of 4,500 owners and beneficiaries. We are actively involved in Ngāti Pākehā and Te Tokotori o Manawa Kotokoto and regularly contribute and participate in iwi matters. Our primary land use activity is leasehold properties, and the Hinihopu Golf Course is also located on our lands. Collectively, we have 30 leasehold agreements, mostly along Tamatea Street at Hinihopu. The Ngāti Maikino Area Authority was primarily established to receive, manage and administer the Ngāti Maikino assets on behalf of and for the benefit of present and future beneficiaries. Maikino has strong and functional relationships with its people to bring about positive influence for our iwi. Our area of interest extends from a northwestern point at Makatu, stretching eastwards beyond Matata, near Whakatane, and then moving inland, incorporating Etchikam and Te Teko, and then moving west towards and including the northern parts of Lake Rotorua, all of Lake Rotorua, the northern end of Lake Rotiti, and travelling back to Makatu following the boundary line on the eastern side of State Highway 33. Te Tokotori o Manawa Kotokoto, we are part of the larger Te Tokotori o Manawa Kotokoto, an iwi collective which includes Ngāti Maikino, Ngāti Pākehā and Ngāti Rongamai. Key metrics associated with Te Tokotori, our combined population is approximately 10,461 people. Our area of interest is 104,000 hectares. Land still under Māori title is 35,000 hectares. Our lake beds 5,728 hectares. And dock conservation areas of 15,000 hectares. Out of aroha for people in whenua and unavoidable government intervention, Ngāti Pākehā, Ngāti Rongamai and Ngāti Maikino collectively gifted 19% in lakes and conservation areas for the appreciation, use and enjoyment of all, lost 46% through government policy and or land sales, and retained 34% under the Te Ture Whenua Māori legislation. With the proposed long-term plan document, we have concerns that what is being suggested is detrimental to the well-being of our people, particularly regarding the costs of the Rotiti Rotorua sewage scheme. For both Te Tāhuna Trust and Ngāti Maikino to achieve our aspirations for growth, it is critical that the development needs of our hapu and iwi are seriously considered. Building our reputation and economy. This outcome primarily focuses on urban tourism and is not fit for purpose for rural communities such as ours. We have locally based tourism that already exists around the Okere River with the Okere zipline, whitewater rafting, kayaking, and it was one of several venues for the 2021 ICF Junior and Under-23 Canoe Slalom World Championships. We also have Manu Pirua Springs on Lake Rotiti and Kohu Kiwi experiences at Mauria. New research conducted by NIWA, and which was published in December 2023, revealed that the most popular lake in New Zealand for freshwater fishing is Lake Rotiti. Lakes Rotoihu, Rotomā and Okataina are also popular for freshwater fishing. Over the 2023-24 Christmas and New Year holiday period, as a result of the high lake levels at Lake Rotomā, Tamatea Street became overwhelmed with recreational users. Whānau and locals literally had to arrive early in the morning to secure a spot along the beach. During rugby league season, we see thousands of Hāti Aotearoa New Zealand Māori rugby league players and supporters from various age groups converge at Rotorua over many weekends between April and October. 6 tournaments this year. During these tournaments, most, if not all, marae around Lake Rotiti are booked to host visiting teams. Many of these teams return to the same marae every year. Te Tāhuna Trust and Ngāti Maikino have economic and cultural interests in sustainable tourism activities in Aotearoa, and the master plan does not appear to align with our tourism aspirations. Your rates. Short-term rental accommodation. Council is proposing that properties used for short-term rental accommodation should contribute a fair share towards the district and to tourism promotion. Airbnb Economics Report, which explored the 12 months to March 2023, stated that Airbnb contributed $2.8 billion to New Zealand's GDP. Airbnb was responsible for around 7.8% of the broader travel and tourism sector's GDP and 6.6% of its total employment in New Zealand. Airbnb guests spent a total of over $3 billion in New Zealand on accommodation and other goods and services, such as dining and retail. Airbnb guests in New Zealand spent, on average, $1,138 per trip in 2022, which included accommodation as well as purchases from local businesses and transport. While the information above is New Zealand-wide, I believe it is extremely relevant to Rotorua. In fact, based on this data, Airbnb will most certainly contribute more than their fair share towards the district. Transport infrastructure, rural street improvements, Māori road lines and unformed roads, and rural seal improvements are all funding streams that Council wish to discontinue. Sadly, all these proposals disadvantages rural communities such as ours. We are aware of several whenua Māori entities in Aotearoa that have plans for papakainga and housing developments and other sustainable tourism projects. Discontinuing the funding opportunities further limits our prospects of future development, and it takes the focus away from our community. The Roti Rotorua sewage scheme. RLC has demonstrated a significant lack of transparency and accountability in the management of the scheme. The financial imposition placed on the local community is not only excessive, but also disproportionately burdensome, particularly for the local Māori population and those from lower socio-economic backgrounds. The initial estimate of $15,000 was a more manageable expectation for most residents, and the sudden escalation to a staggering $45,500 that is to be covered by the residents highlights a severe mismanagement and breach of trust. Moreover, the Council's approach to the fiscal responsibilities associated with this project fails to consider the economic disparities within the communities it serves, ignoring the broader social implications of such financial demands. The repayment options. The proposed repayment options further illustrates the Council's disregard for the economic reality of the most vulnerable members of our community. The amounts, even when spread over time, are likely unmanageable for many whānau, particularly in light of the current economic pressures. The scheme, while environmentally beneficial, should not lead to financial stress for the residents it is supposed to benefit. Furthermore, the lack of interest-free option and the rigid structure of the repayment plans do not accommodate the diverse financial situations within the community. The Council must adopt a more compassionate and flexible approach to ensure that protecting our lakes does not come at the expense of our people's financial stability. So just some key points. Te Tahuna Ngāti Mākeno would like a representative determined by our iwi to be appointed to the CCO Rotorua, New Zealand, to ensure the interests of our community are truly considered. We would also like an iwi technician to be appointed to the submission team that finalises the LTP. Lastly, we would like an independent review of the Roti Rotorua sewage scheme. Just to wrap up our submissions, it is disappointing that the LTP is very urban-centric and has no regard for the rural communities such as ours. It is also disappointing that the proposals to discontinue particular funding streams affects whānau hapu and iwi the most. This further limits our prospects of future development. Lastly, given the amount of submitters from our community, it was extremely disheartening that Council did not consider hosting a couple of days hearings at a marae in Rotiti, which is what we had requested in all our submissions. During the RLC submissions period, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council hosted one of their LTP hearings at Huria Marae in Tauranga. This was a missed opportunity for the Rotorua Lakes Council. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you, Wai. I would now like to welcome the Mamaku Residents Association with Collective Rural Communities. And elected members, this is 303 submission.
Kia ora, it's Rachel Bidwell again.
This time I am representing a collective rural community of Mamaku, Kaharoa, Nongataha and Rotorua. Every single rural community has its own issues, and each of them are unique to them, as you've just heard. Geographical issues, historical issues, population issues, etc. I cannot speak for their individual issues, only Mamaku's, which you have already heard. And I know you have also heard from many of the other communities out there regarding their issues. What I will talk about is our total agreement on the lack of funding for rural in the LTP. Oh my goodness, can you imagine what our rural roading, drainage and general infrastructure will look like if there's going to be 10 years of no maintenance or improvements? That will cost a ridiculous amount if left for 10 years, especially with inflation the way it is. So again, we put to you our suggestion of targeted rates. Keep it simple, one set rate across the board. Some communities are smaller, so would logically have less in their pool than other communities with a higher population or higher rates value. But it's all relative, as potentially those with more in their pool would require more work. This targeted rate may not cover the entire cost of the required work, but at least there would be some stash of money there. And this targeted rate is not on top of the expected 10% rate hike. This would be included in the new rates total. Council would still have 90% of our rates for the urban issues they have listed as necessary, even though we as rural don't benefit from them as much as our townie counterparts. We are all part of the greater Rotorua district and are proud to call Rotorua home. The devolved fund needs to stay and be either the same value or, if possible, more. If there is going to be no other kind of grants available for rural, then this needs to be available for the smaller assets improvements that crop up. Another issue we all agree on is the lack of a rural voice in council. I personally take my hat off to Karen Barker, who has a phenomenal area to represent, but she is only one person. There needs to be more to help make rural's voice heard and carry more weight. Without the luxury of an OIA to give me accurate figures, I would still like to say that the rural population contributes a very sizable chunk of Rotorua's total rates, possibly approximately 20%, especially going on land value alone. So we believe that there needs to be more input and representation from both the Rural Board and the Lakes Board at the full council meetings. And at the Rural and Lakes Board meetings, there needs to be a change in meeting protocol to include a roundtable discussion. As some of you may be aware, I find it very frustrating to have a 5-minute time slot at the very beginning of the meetings, but then am forbidden to speak again when it is obviously relevant. So there needs to be an opportunity for the rural representatives to be included in any further relevant discussions. These are just a few of our concerns, but they are our top concerns. There is so much more that we could touch on. Raising Rotorua back to the top tourist destination is one, alongside improving Rotorua's reputation after the damage done with the emergency housing debacle. You only need to look on social media to grasp how badly our reputation has suffered. But this is enough for now. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I'd now like to invite Mark Gibb up to give the submission on behalf of Pokero Uruawhata Group.
Kia ora koutou, thank you for allowing us to present today. I'll hand over directly to Brett Farquhar, who will take you through our submission, and I'll make a couple of comments at the conclusion. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor, councillors. Obviously, you've read the submission, so we'll just try and touch on the main points. First one is around development contributions, obviously, and this is not new to your ears. Over the years, Ngāti Whakaue has been of great benefit to the city, and one of our submission points is there should be some sort of recognition of that, whether that be a waiver of development contributions or some sort of subsidy along those lines. There are obviously exemptions in the development contributions policy for marae development, for example, so the ability to extend that further for Māori development is there. However, in saying that, though, if that is not the case, then we do have concerns with the updated development contributions policy this time round. Pukeroa, primarily Rotorua City Centre based, is looking at a doubling of development contributions for any development that is undertaken. We find that quite staggering, given that only 18 months ago we went through this whole process. So 18 months down the track to double contributions, we think is crazy. In some cases, Nongataha, for example, is quadruple the development contributions. Further to that, obviously the introduction or the sourcing of government funds has been sought by council. So coupling with, what did I put here, $140 million worth of government funding plus, up to a doubling of rates, it just seems the two just do not marry together. Specifically to Pukeroa, they're going through a number of feasibility projects, and maybe Mark can sort of touch on this at the end, but for around the lakefront in terms of further developments, whether it be the spa developments, spa adjacent developments, hotel developments. And obviously there's an opportunity here for Rotorua to have, bring the lakefront to the city, high class entertainment precinct, and higher development contributions just lessens the chances of those developments either happening or, and certainly in some cases, we're actually competing with other city centres for hotels. So that needs to be considered. A couple of other little things too. Obviously, these are, in our opinion, a bit of a disproportionate rates increase business versus residential. A lot of business owners are residential owners as well, so it feels like it's a bit of a double whammy for them. We also made a comment on rates on undeveloped land. Obviously, there is a lot of Māori land in Rotorua. Some of it is undeveloped, and that could be by virtue of the land tenure or the will of the people, or the ability of the people to be able to develop that land. And obviously increasing it to 100% rates is only just going to hurt them further. And then just one little touch just on inner city revitalisation. We think that is critical for Rotorua moving forward to ensure that it remains, our sort of preeminent tourism centre for New Zealand. Mark, if you want to add anything.
Oh, thank you, Brett. Just a couple of very brief comments. So firstly, Brett touched on the lakefront precinct. So with completion and successful opening of Wairiki Spa, our mind now turns to the balance of the lakefront. So we have 3 strategically positioned sites down there, the most significant being that location that's just had the ex-QEH buildings removed off it. Of approximately 1.7 hectares. We're looking to take an ROI out to the market at a global level to look at future opportunities around that piece of land. The development feasibility, though, if we factor in the potential projection of development contributions, becomes far less attractive. So we would ask Council to reconsider those contributions we're completing on a global stage for a development opportunity on that site. And we need to be as nimble and cost effective as we possibly can if we are to secure a quality development, which will be a complete circuit breaker for the city if we are successful in it. In and around rates, off the back of COVID, we're managing around 200 retailer or tenants across the portfolio. Again, the projected level of rates from a CBD perspective is simply, we believe, beyond a number of their means. And again, we would ask that the commercial rating differential be reconsidered in light of the market that we're currently operating in. Nami nui, thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the submission on behalf of Pukeroa Uruwhata. Thank you. I'd now like to welcome Tom from the Lake Rotiti Community Association. And we welcome Jim as well.
Sorry, you know who we are, that's fine. And so in the name of time constraints, we've got a submission there. We've got 2 submissions there before you, and we hope you take cognizance of all the matters we've raised in there. And we're only going to speak on the most critical issue, which is the Rotorua sewerage scheme. And I'll pass over to Tom. He's going to speak to you on that. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you. It's appreciated. As you're well aware, this is a very important matter to our community. You've got our full submission, but on this occasion, what I want to talk about is a number of points. First of all, good faith and moral obligations. Secondly, due diligence and transparency. Thirdly, binding agreements. And fourthly, possible solutions. First of all, on the matter of we committed to the sewerage scheme in good faith, assuming the appropriate moral obligations in return. We accepted the challenge to take up, as 3% of the community, 30% of the cost of the scheme. We took a leap of faith with no written terms of trade and an expectation that the cost would be around $14,000. We signed up to the program. That was against many of our principles to sign something which was virtually a blank cheque. We justifiably expected our commitment to be backed by appropriate due diligence, budget accuracy, fair terms of trade and transparency. With the limitation of time, we'll just give you a few examples of the diligence and transparency issues. I'll start with the announcement of the scheme to Lake Rotorua, which was a public meeting in January 2019. At that meeting, the budget presented was $35.3 million, with a cost to property owners of $14,100 or thereabouts. But the budget was fraught. If you had a close look at it, the budget for Rotorua, 220 installations, was 12 million. The budget that was left over for Rotorua was only 11 million for 450 installations, double the Rotorua installations. If you looked at that and took double the Rotorua cost, which I believe it was appropriate, the total budget should have been on that day 49 million, not 35 million. And the cost to property owners, including GST, should have been 34,000, not 14,000. Just 2 years later, before they started installations at Rotorua, the council told the Rotorua Lake Strategy Group, that they were over budget and that they had a cost blowout of 15 million, taking the estimate for the scheme to 53 million before they started Rotorua. But there was no public advice to the community. Just soon after that, in July 21, the council for the first time, sent a letter to all Rotorua property owners. They've referred to the scheme budget in 2014, a long time earlier, suggesting that the costs perhaps to ratepayers maybe should have been more. That letter made no mention of the increase. It wasn't till February, March 24 that our community discovered that the cost was to go from, first of all, 30 million, we were told by the council, and then the long-term plan, potentially 45,000. How could that be? I do have a little more. I have a submission later this afternoon I'd like to conclude, and then you don't need to hear me again, and neither do I. That's terrific.
Sorry, just to check, Tom, did you say you do have a submission this afternoon as well?
Yes, I do.
But you'd rather do that now?
I'd rather do that. I'd rather complete the submission and do it now, yes.
Okay. It's Tom Mackey, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
So, elected members, this is hearing number 314. We'll just reset the timer for you, and you're welcome to make that submission now.
So as I say, thank you for that extension or the allowance. I guess a question here we have for you is, where was the council governance over the scheme? How was our community allowed to go through to the end of the scheme before they knew that the expectation of what they were to pay was 3 times what they understood? All along we've been told that the council was doing everything they could to keep it as close as possible to the original estimate. And the point I think that's particularly important here too is that at the time they knew the potential cost was 53 million and 40,000 to ratepayers, the installations hadn't started at Rotorua. They had time to tell the community before they started installations that the cost now could be somewhere around, potentially could be up to 40,000. They went ahead with all those installations, and it wasn't till after something like 300 Rotorua installations had taken place that they let us know. And the first time they let us know was in response to a community association letter to the council asking, is this what 53 million, 56 million expectation for the total budget means to us? And they confirmed, yes, it does. But they confirmed it was 30,000, not 45,000. So moving on, possible solutions. We believe taking no action will not be pretty. Severe hardship will be imposed on a large, vulnerable section of our community with consequent major downstream problems. Legal action is very likely probable, accompanied with government reviews. Mass movements to the disputes tribunal are possible. It seems like a pretty attractive option. Rotorua's reputation for managing major projects and external funding could be severely tarnished, inhibiting the district's future growth. You have a great record of attracting support from other areas. You need to protect that, and you're doing great work with those funds. We do have options. We have a new mayor and CEO. If you move quickly, we believe you can acknowledge that there were shortcomings in the management of the scheme, learn from an independent review of this project, spread the rate increase required to recoup the cost overrun in a fair and equitable manner across all ratepayers and beneficiaries of the scheme, and live your vision of a better Rotorua for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom, and also to Jim for being present to make your submissions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elected members, that concludes this morning's hearings. We will take a break for the rest of the day before we start again for our evening submissions that will go from 5 p.m. till 8 p.m. Just a heads up, we are holding a citizenship ceremony in here, so please take all of your items with you. We will see you again at 5 o'clock. Thank you.